Pattaya City Expats Club is a non-profit social organisation and our speakers are volunteers. The club as such assumes no responsibility or liability for the professional reputation of or the quality of services provided by the speaker today.
Good morning everyone. After the Lord Mayor's show comes the, immigration and visa issues are always a popular subject, I know, in expat clubs, and I know when Darren, who did this sort of thing for many years, would attest, or maybe can attest. But you know, talking about immigration is a bit like wrestling with an octopus, I think. There are so many arms and legs and tentacles in play at the same time that eventually you're tempted to give up. But this expat club, you know, is very fortunate because you have a very good website, and the section that Daryl, maybe he does it all, I don't know, but the section that Daryl is famous for is the immigration website, and it's very good. I hope you all realise what a bonus it is to have that section in your publicity. The context of immigration at the moment, I think, things that are happening that affect it are firstly the huge expansion of Utapao Airport. I assume you're all aware that between 1,000 and 2,000 people arrive every day or most days at Utapao near Rayong. They didn't used to because it didn't take these sort of flights. They come from China, some cities, particularly Xi'an, which has the famous Terracotta Army, many Russian cities, Vladivostok and Ekaterinburg, to name two, not just Moscow and Beijing. That's very out of date. These are new markets with people queuing up by the tens of thousands to come to Pattaya. Also, there's regular flights from Dubai, and you shouldn't think they're all from the Middle East, the passengers there. Dubai is a very important transit point all around the world, so people go to Dubai, then switch airlines and come to Pattaya. So this is responsible, the boom in Utapao, for the fact that now Pattaya is a pretty busy city. I won't elaborate on it, but you know that wherever you go, you're likely to meet a long queue. The second context, I think, of immigration at the moment is the obsession with where you slept last night. I think you'll be aware what I mean. There are 3 forms floating around that you're supposed to fill in from time to time. The TM6 was the old form that used to be given out on aeroplanes and with your address on it, which nobody could read anyway. No immigration officer has ever tried to transcribe the address. You used to scribble on the back of a TM6, sometimes in the Chinese language and so on. It's never done. What purpose it provided, goodness only knows. But it's still in use at the border posts and the ports. The other form, which is still in use, of course, is the TM47, or the 90-day report. I'm not giving a lecture on that. You all know the ins and outs of it, I assume. But it is a 3-week window, you know, the TM30, the TM47. It's a 3-week window when the due date, when you've been here 90 days, you can do it 2 weeks before and 1 week after. If you do it later than 1 week after, you're likely to be fined. But it is a window, not a date, and it has nothing to do with your visa. It's simply a requirement that they want to keep their eye on your address. And the daddy of them all is the TM30, which I'm sure you all know about as well. If you've been out of the country and come back, you're supposed to fill in a new TM30 and get it registered. I know a lot of you are on retirement visas, so I spoke to the captain in charge of retirement visas the other day in the immigration. He told me that if you're on a retirement visa, they don't actually insist on you do a TM30 every time you come back in the country, because the table that deals with the retirement visas every year does not actually check whether you did a TM30 or not. The problem is, if you do anything else in the immigration, they might want you to have filled in a TM30 irrespective of your visa status since you last came in the country. So you want a re-entry permit? They might or they might not. ask for a re-entry permit, might ask for a TM30. You sold a condo or bought one, you need a letter from the immigration about your address, and the pressures are on to provide a very recent proof of address, which means last night. Where did you sleep last night? Same is true of renewing your driving license and any other reasons why you should actually need proof of address. So it's moving in the direction, I'm afraid, that every time you leave the country and come back, you're increasingly likely to require to fill a new one in. I suppose the answer is to move online. If you could report your 90-day online and the TM30 online, which you can in theory, you wouldn't have to go to the immigration anyway and stand in line. But it's not too easy, is it, to register online? But there we go, that's the way it's moving. And I think the advice, which I think Darryl gives on his website, is increasingly you do need to do it every time you come in the country, unless you've never been abroad, or unless you're absolutely sure that you won't have to step inside Pattaya immigration for any other reason, because that's when they've got you, if you need some other document. The third context at the moment with immigration, I think, is the improvements that there have been or are being made in the Jomtien Immigration Office. It's not a popular thing to say this, but the new colonel there, Perina Klinkison, has brought already some quite important innovations there. There are a lot more chairs to sit on, for example, and he has also put immigration officers, or sometimes immigration staff, some people that work in the immigration are not actually immigration officers, they're civilians with a different uniform on and volunteers, put them outside in order to answer questions like how many photos, where do I stand, what's this form mean, all that kind of thing. And he has also made better use, I think, of the car park at the immigration. It used to be a car park, not now, so that the signs are clearer about how you can report your address or stand in line for a retirement visa. It's a different queue. I think it's all helped, and there are one or two other improvements in the pipeline which are private at the moment, so I can't tell you what they are, but they're all good. And the final context of what's happening in immigration at the moment, nationally and locally, is that there are moves ahead to try to allow you to extend a visa or apply for a new visa online. So you would pay online and you would send the documents, upload them online, so that you wouldn't have to fill in the form as you do at the moment at the immigration, or get a form at home. It would all be done online, apart from actually collecting your new visa, or it might be a vignette, a little sticker, which you would have to briefly visit the immigration to get the confirmation or the stamp in your passport. But the application process, the payment and the forms would be all online. It is a pilot in Bangkok at the moment, and I believe it's quite successful. But it wouldn't mean every visa, because there's such a lot of local variation, and that's perhaps the point, that every immigration office has its own rules within the broad framework, and I think many of you are very clear about that, and certainly if you read Facebook you couldn't avoid knowing that variations are enormous between offices. And it would be a step in the right direction if some of it was standardized so that wherever you were, you could apply online. However, that won't be happening anytime soon, if ever, because there's now going to be a general election. It'll be many, many months before a new immigration head is appointed, and then he'll have to think about it and review it all. So we're not looking at anything this year, if indeed we're ever looking at it, but it is a step in the right direction. One of the confusions about immigration, I find, is the confusion between how many days people are entitled to when they don't have any sort of visa. There are about 60 countries, including, I guess, everyone in this room, who are entitled, if they wish, for 45 days on arrival without providing any documentation or prior approval from your embassy. And most of these countries can then get another 30 days extension for 1,900 at the immigration, but not all. If you're Russian, for example, you get 45 days on arrival, but you can't extend at all at the immigration. You'd have to go out of the country or go on a visa run to Pongnam Run to get another 45 days. It gets very, very confusing at the level of detail. But for people in this room, I suspect you're in the 45 plus 30. If you wished, then you could go to the Cambodian border, if you wished, Pongnam Run, and get another 45 plus 30 days. It would be 5 months without any visa at all. So a lot of people wouldn't need to worry about visas. Whether this will continue beyond the end of March, nobody knows. I mean, it's already March the 22nd, but that doesn't mean much in Thailand, because if you remember the days of COVID, quite often the immigration announced that COVID extensions were still going to be held, and the date was announced after the previous one had run out. So sometimes even after the crucial date, in this case the end of March, you might get an announcement. No one's sure. There are also visas on arrival. These are not to be confused with visa exempt, which I've just described. It costs you nothing to come into the country with your 45 days. Visa on arrival costs you 2,000 baht, and you only get 30 days. And these are for 20 countries, principally led by India and China, and they can't extend at all. They're expected to depart or go to another country and apply in a Thai embassy. They can't go either to the Cambodian border to do a visa run. Visa on arrival for 20 countries means you pay 2,000 baht for the privilege when you come in, but it's very much a temporary measure. Of course, many Chinese try to extend the visas while they're here. That's led to some problems with alleged corruption, which many of you will know about. But without a visa, it's 30 days, and that's it for China and India and 18 other countries, including some strange countries like Togoland. Most people don't even know where Togoland is. I once looked it up on the map and it said it had closed, so I don't know where it is. The border runs to Cambodia have been legitimized for people like yourself and other people from the countries that get 45 days on arrival. They used to be a bit iffy, well, the border run, but now it's openly accepted that people can do this. But you are limited to 2 a calendar year. If you go to the border to get another 45 days, you can only do it twice at the border, but up to about 6 times. There's no formal rule about it if you come back by air. And some people come back more than that. It just depends. The immigration officer has the right to say, you are coming to Thailand a lot, why don't you get a visa? But there can be reasons for that. People who work in the oil industry in the Middle East, there's all sorts of complications. But visa exempt and visa on arrival are by no means the same. There are also 5 countries who get 90 days on arrival. These are countries that Thailand has a special agreement with, so that Thais don't need a visa to go there, but they don't get 90 days. But in gratitude for the fact that Thais don't need a visa to go to these 5 countries, there's a special arrangement. The nationals of South Korea, Peru, Argentina, Brazil and Chile all get 90 days on arrival. If you ever speak to people in these countries, you think there's a mistake in their passport. There isn't. They are entitled to 90 days, and they could go to the border and get another 90 days, and then another one. They could get 180 days without ever needing a visa. That shouldn't disguise the fact, that half the countries in the world, I've covered about half the world in what I've said in the last 2 minutes, but half the countries in the world can't come to Thailand at all without a visa in advance from an embassy in their own country, or in the case of many African countries, a neighbouring country, because there isn't a visa, a Thai embassy in every country. It's worth remembering that, I think. Half the countries in the world can't come without the permission of a Thai embassy abroad. Can't come even for 1 minute, let alone 45 days. We turn now to medical insurance, because it's a topic often brought up. I think probably you're all experts on it anyway. There were rumours 2 and 1 year ago that medical insurance would become very dominant. Everyone got very excited that you all needed a COVID insurance, COVID-specific insurance, to come here at all until about last June. whenever it was. But it never happened. All they did, the government, was remove the requirement to have COVID insurance, and they did not replace it for most visas by any requirement to have general medical insurance. So that hasn't moved forward at all, in spite of the rumours. Why? Well, the Thai government's gone for growth. It doesn't want to complicate tourism and the revival of it by complications about medical insurance, and it's just a bit too overwhelming a problem I'll return to in a minute. So the compulsory medical insurance is only in place, I think, for 2, possibly 3 visas. You can't renew an OA visa or get one in the first place, the annual OA visa, without some sort of insurance, though it seems to vary a bit according to who you speak to, what insurance they'll accept. You do need some sort of medical insurance to either get an OA visa, which can only be got at an embassy abroad. No one has ever got an OA visa in Thailand, and no one ever will. Extending it is different from getting it in the first place, but the extensions do require some sort of medical insurance. In theory, about 3 million baht, but I'm told that this isn't seriously being enforced in many offices. If you've got the OA visa and you want rid of it, I'm afraid you can't, only by leaving the country without a re-entry permit and coming back with something else, maybe 45 days on arrival, and starting again. And if you do that, then you would get an O visa at the immigration, providing you satisfied the requirements, and you wouldn't have any more trouble about the OA. The other visa, which requires medical insurance, is the 10-year long-term residence visa, which has been a bit of a flop, really. It was introduced last September. I think you've vaguely heard about it. I've had many discussions with people about it, but I've never known anyone actually apply for it. Apparently 3,000 people registered interest, but how many successful applications have been, I don't know. I don't know why you'd want it, and I'll return to that just at the end. Work permits are another issue that often crops up, and there is a difference, you see, between a labour permit and a work permit. You will have noticed in the offices next to the immigration, where as I put up there, I'm a part-time legal advisor to a group of lawyers there. The office is next to the immigration. You'll often see queues of Burmese, Cambodians and Lao handing in hundreds of passports, and this is because the office that registers local alien labour, economic migrants, legally from 3 countries who have understandings with Thailand, that is Myanmar or Burma, Cambodia and Laos, that's where they register, not in the immigration in an attempt to reduce the queues, but the office next to it. They all have manual work permits, and the labour permit is not to be a teacher or a doctor or run a restaurant. It is mainly for manual work. In Pattaya, a lot of it is in building condos. It's the Myanmars who've built Pattaya, actually, not the Thais, because 70% of local guest workers are from Myanmar. They're not from Laos, which has a very small population, or even Cambodia. Some, but not many. And these are 90 days they have to do. They register with us, re-entry permits, so the office next door. And this is labour permits, nothing to do, I think, with anyone in this room. A work permit is a very different matter. Some of you may well have work permits, non-immigrant B required, all that kind of thing, which we haven't time to go through today. Either someone offers you a job, in which case they're responsible for getting you the work permit. Hopefully they're a registered company or a registered school and they know what they're doing. Or if you can set up your own company, I want to open a restaurant, or I want to do this, you've got to have capital Thai partners, and it all gets quite complicated. But work permits and labour permits are very, very different subjects. A thing I missed from medical insurance is that, sorry, I forgot it, in June this year, there will be a tax on all airfares coming into the country of 300 baht, which they say, the government says, will be used partly to fund medical insurance. But this has nothing to do with anyone in this room and if they fall ill. What they mean by funding medical insurance is that if there's a tragedy such as a boat sinks in the channel or a major bus accident and people are killed, then they're under pressure, the Thai government obviously, to find money. It's meant for things like that, paying for cremations and compensations. It has nothing to do with funding your bill when you go to the Bangkok Pattaya Hospital or Naklua General Hospital and say, you know, I want a new leg, please. Forget it. It's just nothing to do with anyone in this room, unless you're involved in a very, very nasty accident with 30 others also killed. You know, it's a tragedy insurance. And that's coming in June for 300 baht each person, of which 30 baht will go to what I've just said, funding disasters, and the rest of it will be a fund to upgrade tourist monuments, building toilets in parks and things like that, repairs. It's not essentially about insurance at all. Going back to work permits, sorry I got mixed up there. Another thing about work permits is we often get asked about volunteer work permits. They never were very common, and the idea of them was that if you were working for a foundation, which was recognised by the Thai government or an NGO or something like that, you might be able to get a volunteer work permit for 3 months. But they've now become very discredited, I'm afraid. They were used widely by the immigration to extend people under COVID. Immigration, here's a volunteer work permit for 3 months, even though they weren't a volunteer. Another problem with volunteer work permits is that they have got mixed up with these corruption inquiries that are going on at the moment, whereby particularly Chinese, but not only Chinese citizens, have sometimes been offered visas to which they were not entitled, as some of you will know. And student visas too. They've been the subject of some abuse, and there are people enrolled now in language schools in Thailand who really have no idea, have not really learned any Thai at all. There was a case the other day, it wasn't a prosecution, it was just an inquiry by the immigration, who spoke to a gentleman who'd been learning Thai for 3 years, and so they said, could you translate please, Pla yai kin pla lek, which is a Thai idiom meaning big fish eat little fish. And he said, oh, I think that's in the national anthem. So it's not, of course. Finally, on work permits, there is one visa that gives you, or 2 visas actually, that give you a work permit without requiring a separate application. One is the 4-year SMART visa, which is used widely in the Eastern Economic Corridor, which we're in, but it gets very technological if you go towards Rayong. Haven't got time to go into what the Eastern Economic Corridor is, but it's far and away the most important influence on Pattaya over the next 10 years, no doubt at all. Can already see it. They haven't built all these motorways and talking about building new railways and so on to enable you to find your way to the nearest club or go-go bar. It's all about industry, import, exports, all that kind of thing. And it'll all come. But there is a smart visa for clever people who are computer specialists or know how to build an electric car. And the 4-year smart visa, it doesn't actually require a separate work permit, but you have to be pretty skilled to get it. Another one is the 10-year, which I mentioned before, long-term residence visa, which can carry with it a free work permit, a digital work permit they throw in. But why would anyone want to go to all the bureaucracy and expense and complications of that visa when, if you want a 5 to 10 or 20-year visa, the elite visa is a good deal more straightforward and actually works out cheaper in the long run. The one advantage of the LTR, long-term residence 10-year, is if you were a highly successful businessman or an incredibly well-paid executive, your income tax liability in Thailand is limited to 17%. Tax here can go up to 33%, and it never goes up. And so there are a few people, perhaps in the highest echelons of industry and commerce, who might be interested. But why people like us, or retirees and people just with ordinary jobs or tourists, why they want to bother with the LTR, I don't know, because it overlaps heavily with the elite visa, which is a good deal more straightforward if you really feel you want to have 5, 10 or 20 years here. And then finally there is the extensions based on medical conditions. It's just worth remarking that the maximum, if you're too ill to leave the country, the maximum you can get is 90 days at a time, but I've never seen that. Maximum I've ever seen is 30 days, and they ask you to come back. It's an officer discretion, but pregnant women of 7 months or more are more or less entitled to it. It has been the subject of ongoing inquiries, though, with the possibility of abuse or people who weren't ill at all managing to get these extensions. And an immigration working party nationally in November 2022 more or less said that in future, because of abuse in the system, if you wanted a medical extension, you would have to be an inpatient in a hospital. If you can make your way to the immigration to ask for one, you're too well to get one. If you're well enough to walk to the immigration, you're well enough to go to the Cambodian border. And even if you are in hospital, you should advise anyone in that position to get the more photos, the better, you know, medical reports, tubes sticking out of you in every direction is the way to go. If somebody could get me a glass of water, because I've finished now, I'd be very grateful. Okay, so no chance of medical extensions, I'm afraid, unless you're in hospital long term and provide lots of photos and doctor's reports, not just one photo if you're looking a bit miserable sat in a wheelchair. Not enough anymore, I'm afraid. Okay, I'll leave it there because I know the key to these things is people having their own say or asking questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barry. Now we're going to take some questions. If you have any questions, raise your hand and we will... Oh, here we go.
I've got a TM6 in my passport since 2019. Can I throw that out?
Yeah, just keep it in your passport. It's okay, and eventually when you leave the country or you go to the crematorium, they'll take it out.
Yeah. Oh, if they want medical tourism, you'd think they'd grant medical extensions.
Yeah, the biggest, the TM6, I saw one the other day. That's the form they used to give you out in the plane when you landed, and it was 2002. He'd never left the country for 21 years, so you don't have a record there.
2019, that's 3 more years.
Yeah, okay.
That was COVID, yeah.
2002 it was 20, over 20 years.
In the year 2020.
Hi, Barry. What's the chance of opening an office in Pattaya?
What office?
An immigration office.
What do you mean? I don't know what you mean.
It sort of happened going to Jomtien.
Oh, I see. You mean might it move?
Yeah.
Oh, you mean would it move? Yes. Well, it would require the approval of the central government, anything like that. And with the election, there'll be nothing for many months. There have been many rumours about that. The biggest rumour was it to move to the Avenue shopping centre with villa in it on the second road. Totally unsuitable. I mean, the parking there is horrendous and so on. I don't know and have not been told of any serious suggestion to move it from where it is now in Jomtien. No, that's all I can tell you. I don't know of any such plans.
On your left, Barry.
Sorry.
Thank you. My American friend has lived here, had a retirement visa for about 10 years, and she's in the States now, got a new passport, and they haven't given her back her old one. And she's wondering what she can do.
Yeah, that's awkward because when the immigration transfer your stamps over, they expect to see the old passport. There are two answers to it. One, she could, if she's kept copies of the relevant pages of the old passport she hasn't got anymore, they'd probably accept that. And the other way would be to get some sort of contact with the American embassy here to say that you to say that it's not been returned or it's not their procedure or something. That's all you can say.
Okay, thank you.
No clear answer to that because it's officer discretion. They could overlook it and make a fuss about it. You know.
Barry, Barry, I've been told by a reliable source that there is now an immigration office in every province in Thailand. And in fact, my wife took advantage of that up in Isan. And I'm just wondering, I know part of the rule is if I go to renew my retirement visa, I should go to the office closest to where I'm staying. But I'm just wondering if how strictly they would enforce that if I went up to Galasine province where my wife got her extension, her Thai extension, there's a term for that, original Thai, on her American passport. They were happy to do it. But I don't know how they would have treated me if I would have gone up and asked for that.
Yes, it's not, you have to think very carefully before you start moving your so-called permanent address. You can only have, under Thai law, one permanent address till you change it. And the problem is if you're not going to be there all the time, you could probably change, say, a retirement visa here to a retirement visa up there with a new address and show you to be in Barn or your wife's ID or whatever evidence you use to prove your address. Then you'd start to roll into problems. What happens when you want a re-entry permit and you're down here? You might be in the wrong place at the wrong time. What happens when you want to buy a condo? They would expect you to go to for the certificate of residence, they expect you to go to the address, your main address. You can't choose which immigration office you go to, and they're pretty strict about it. So I wouldn't do it unless you're going to be 8 months of the year up there. You can run into all sorts of unexpected problems, 90 days, will you be in the right city? Remember that immigration under Thai law, a bit like the car registration system used to be, it is not a national service, it's a local service by province. And move outside the province where you've given your address can be tricky. Not impossible, but tricky. I wouldn't bother with it if I were you.
On the left side, Barry?
Yes, I'm wondering if you can perhaps give some advice. It's not for me, but a friend of mine. I guess he's one of the perhaps number of UK citizens, because of the length of time it's taking to renew a passport in the UK. He had to submit his old passport to immigration to extend his retirement permission, and because his passport was not enough to for them to give him a year, they gave him whatever it was.
7 months or whatever.
Yeah, whatever, yeah. I guess he's wondering now when he can apply, when he does get his new passport, when eventually, and has to get the visa changed to the new passport, will that automatically go to the year, or will it? What will happen then?
Yeah, it used to go for the full year. Once you got a new passport, they were willing to give you the extra 5 months in the example we gave, assuming he has 7 months at the moment. Then now you'll find the immigration, I think in most offices, don't do that. He will need a new 1-year visa, and he must produce all the documents again when the date currently it expires after 7 months or whenever in the example. He will not get an extra period of time to make up the 12 months. No, it won't.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, I was just trying to make a contribution to the lady that asked about the passport. I renewed my passport in the U.S. recently, and it took a long time for the old one to come back. It didn't come back with the new one. It came back, I don't know, 3 weeks later or something like that. So maybe she will get it back.
The thing is, if an American renews his passport, which you can now do by post without ever going to the American embassy. I know because we've done some in my office. You have to fill the forms in. They return it promptly. It appears that that's not so then if you're in America. Okay.
On left again.
G'day Barry, good talk, good information. Mine's a little bit of a reverse of the guy who had the 7 months in his old passport or coming into his new passport. Very soon I'll be going to Jomtien to do my extension of stay, but I want it not the full 365 days. I want it so it's going to run out in February next year, so I only want about 8-9 months of an extension of stay. So as that way then I'm in a nice pattern from my point of view of renewing my annual extension in February, not in June, July, when there's high probability I'm not actually in Thailand, and you can only do it 30 days or something in advance. Is that so, that you can get less than a full year?
It'll be okay. Yeah, it's okay. Well, they'll give you a full year if the passport doesn't expire before the year's over. You can't pick and choose how long you get. It's the termination of the passport date that determines it, not your travel plans. Not your travel plans. They will give you 12 months, whether you want 9 months or 9 days. It won't make any difference. Nothing to do with you and your travel plans. It's everything to do with the validity of the passport. The passport's run out, that's the end of it.
Yeah, quickly, I take it like a trip to Phuket, and can I online do my 90-day report for back here in Chonburi or here in Pattaya?
Yeah, you can do the 90-day report in Chonburi any time you like. You mean you'll actually be in Phuket at the time, is what you're saying?
Yeah, I would say if I'm not here, I'm in Chiang Mai, Phuket, or whatever, can I do the 90-day report for Pattaya online?
No, but they'd have no way of knowing where you were anyway. I think that's okay. They much prefer you to do it online anyway. It reduces the queues.
Yeah, my question revolves around the, once you fill out a TM8, the re-entry, the multiple re-entry form, do you, once you leave the country and come back, what's the requirement on the 90-day reporting? Does the 90 days start right when you return to the country? And then 90 days from there, you have to fill out the report? Yes, how that
the 90 days ticks. If you've left the country, the 90 days starts to tick the day you re-enter Thailand. So it's 90 days after the re-entry date.
Okay, then a second question is, my passport is expiring in the middle of my old visa. How do I get it transferred? Once I get a new passport, do I just take it to the immigration office? And
take it to the immigration office, but you need a letter from your embassy confirming that you've done that, change your passport, and there's another form, as many of you know, that the Pattaya immigration use separately. So there are two forms. One you'll get from your embassy, we hope, and one you can collect from the immigration or the office next door, and you have to copy some pages of the old passport and one page of the new passport. If you don't know which pages, then just get the staff to do it in the office next to the immigration. 5 baht a page, it's quite reasonable.
Hello. Well, my question has basically been answered now, similar to the gentleman. But the lady asked earlier on, for example, if my wife had her passport renewed and she had to have a letter to say the passport replaced her original passport, when I go back to the UK later in the year, I'm sure I won't be able to get a letter from the passport office in Newport. How would I work that out?
Well, yeah, when you come back, where you change your passport in the UK, in spite of rather than do it here, there is evidence, as you say, that the UK Passport Authority can't understand why Thai immigration wants such a letter. And we've had that a few times. The best way around it is once you're back in Thailand, if we do an email, or you do an email to the embassy and explain the problem, they will send you a blank form you fill in yourself to say that you are indeed the person who's changed his passport from that number to that number. You can fill it in yourself. It's only a photocopy. There's no original signatures. You'd be okay, but you might need to do that if they're difficult in Newport. Mind you, it is part of Wales, so you've got to expect that.
Well, sort of. My friend here is from Newport, so be careful what you say.
Well, I'm from Dublin, actually.
Yeah. Going back on that, the reason I'm not renewing it here is because my visa's up in June, and it takes about 13 weeks to get back from the UK. If I haven't got that when I want to renew my visa, what sort of problems would I encounter then?
Incidentally, it is at the moment only about 7 weeks. Well, I wrote about this in the Pattaya Mail the other day, I think. It's only 7 weeks, and they say it's 11 to 12 on the website, but providing there isn't a problem, like you've changed sex or you know, you've suddenly aged terrifically, it's 7 to 8 weeks. And so I think that it might be better to assume it might be 12. If you run into those sort of problems where you don't have a valid document and your visa needs renewing, all you can do is go to the immigration and explain the problem, producing such documentation as you might have, and they'll usually give you temporary extensions of a month at a time to get through until you do have the required documentation. But it's an officer discretion thing again, but just be polite, wear a tie, long trousers, look, and usually it can be sorted without them creating a big problem or fining you a lot of money. Yeah.
Okay, you kind of notice that Barry is kind of like the Google of immigration. He's like, he knows everything. If you ever got a question, you can ask him. The other thing that you might not know about Barry is if you read the Pattaya Mail, I think right now, Barry, you're writing every article in the Pattaya Mail. Is that just about? He's
about one a day out of 30.
Yeah, he's the #1 scribe, so he kind of keeps the paper going. So I want you to put your hands together. I'm going to present Barry with a certificate of appreciation. I was a little bit hesitant about making a certificate because Barry has been to this club so many times and he's got so many certificates. I don't think you got any more room on your walls, do you?
Actually, we're okay because the cat knocked one off the other day and it's broken, so it's quite valuable. Thank you.
Well, this one's for the cat.
Now, the cat's 15, so you have to make allowances. Okay.